While all of the focus has been on who the Indianapolis Colts will take in round one, Chris Ballard always ends up making some splash picks on day 2 and 3. So, which players on offense could the Colts be targeting throughout the rest of the NFL draft? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore. And guys, this isn't Drake Wally. Drake is actually missing his first ever episode of the Horseshoe Huddle podcast tonight. So much for being the hardest working man in Colts media. I kid. Drake absolutely still is that. He's at a wedding. We're missing you, buddy. Drake even said he was going to try to tune into the show tonight. But with me, I've got someone who is very capable fill-in for Drake Wally tonight, and it's our newest teammate at Horseshoe Huddle, Noah Gebert. Noah, welcome to Horseshoe Huddle. First time publicly saying that. Welcome to the show, and appreciate you stepping in for Drake tonight and giving us really your first official public appearance on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. But how you doing, bud?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm excited to do it. First one that Drake's ever missed. I was surprised to hear that. That's just crazy work ethic from that guy. I don't have a Lucky Colts cup. I have a Polar Pop from Circle K. I don't know if we've got an ad for Circle K later in the show, maybe.
We'll have to see, man. Hey, you never know what kind of ads are gonna pop up, but hey, so I think the rule is, I mean, I've got water here just because I gotta monitor things, guys. I ran out of alcohol actually for the show, so didn't have time to run to be Drake tonight, so that's gonna have to be on Noah. So every time we get a super chat, Noah's got to take a drink. That's just got to be
Dr. Pepper Zeros.
Of Dr. Pepper Zero. We'll imagine it's a Moscow Mule in honor of Drake, but tonight it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about, because as you guys know, we've been really diving into the day one picks, or the potential day one picks for the Indianapolis Colts. On the offensive side of the ball, Brian Thomas Jr., Brock Bowers. You guys know my love for the Brock Bowers train. Xavier Worthy potentially, but also on defense, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold. But tonight we're going to focus on the day 2 and day 3 picks, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. We'll get to defense next week. But Noah, if the Colts do say they go corner in round 1 with Mitchell or DeJean, there's still a need, especially at wide receiver. We think for this Indianapolis Colts team, and with such a deep wide receiver class this year, round 2 wide receiver really could not, or really isn't out of the realm of possibility. You're also looking at potentially adding some depth along the offensive line or in that running back room. So there's a lot of different positions on offense that the Colts could go on days 2 and 3 of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of looking more and more likely like defense is going to be the pick. I mean, obviously you never know what come draft day what's going to happen, but I mean, once you start taking out all those first round receivers that you think might come to the Colts, you're kind of searching through what's left and trying to find something that might offer some explosive elements in the offense. And really, once you get past those round 1 guys, you're finding a lot of guys that are a lot more one-dimensional, not as well-rounded of players. So kind of picking and choosing. And I've got my eyes on a couple of guys that I think could fill roles for the team, but maybe not step in and be that immediate starter.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun night to talk about these guys. Want to give a shout out to Truitt getting us off with the super chat this evening. Truitt, thank you so much for all of your support. Truitt says cornerback day 1, day 2 edge, wide receiver, tight end. There you go, Noah. Is Mo coming back? I mean, so far there's no indication Indianapolis Colts, but thank you so much, Truitt, for all of your support. Want to shout out my beautiful 35-week wife, pregnant wife, Danielle, for the super chat. She's hey guys, Jackson could come any day now, so we'll have to see when that does happen. You guys probably won't be seeing me for a couple of weeks, but thank you so much as always for all of your support. Want to give a shout out to Stats Matt, the third host of the show as always. Tonight is Stats Matt's wild card round of stats, so that's going to be a lot of fun to see what he's got cooked up. Got a lot of them, and they lead to the Super Bowl of stats, the draft. So as everyone's coming in here, we want to make sure you're following all of us on social media. Go follow Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. go follow or like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, I should say. Follow at Colts on FN on X and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or when Noah joins the show, so you never miss an episode. If you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And guys, we're only 1 week away, so make sure you go out there and order the Indy Draft Guide. Over 225 prospect write-ups with their fits at the Indianapolis Colts, strengths, weaknesses, their player comps, plus the entire Build a Baller series, a deep dive into athletic testing and how the Colts have used RAS in order to dive into these prospects, and so much more. If you click the link in the description, you get the draft guide. It's what we're using all draft season, so make sure you go and order yours today. So Noah, let's dive right into it. Let's talk about the Colts offensive targets on day 2 and 3 of the NFL draft here. And I think we should really look and start with the wide receiver position, because like I said, if the Colts do go with Quinyon Mitchell or Terry and Arnold Cooper DeJean round 1, I think naturally you would think the Colts are probably going to go wide receiver in round 2. Because there are a lot of options out there, and the Colts really need to bolster that group. Yes, you have Michael Pittman, you have Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. You think he will be better with Anthony Richardson next year, but after that, there's really a lot of nothing. Ashton Doolin provides good depth and a good special teams play, but you still need more firepower. And Shane Steichen wants to add more firepower to this offense to be more dynamic and be more explosive, especially deep down the field where the Colts were really lacking last year.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the depth chart and you just listed off all those guys, and then you start to imagine, God forbid, Michael Pittman goes down for any period of time next year, then you're working with Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and Ashton Doolin as your 1, 2, 3, which is an issue. Even with Michael Pittman in the lineup, I think you need to figure out something for rotational snaps or someone to fill a little bit more of a specialty role or a niche role. I know Colts went super hard trying to find somebody of a different size when they went with Josh Downs last year, and they brought in Isaiah McKenzie. And even with Downs on the roster early in the season, especially, McKenzie was getting quite a bit of run. So looking for somebody to kind of be a gadget guy, maybe perhaps, or go around the end, fill in on the slot. But also just especially when you're talking day 3, or you going for someone with a little bit more of a versatile skill set that can fill in at all 3 spots.
Yeah, I would agree. And you remember, Chris Ballard talked about it earlier this offseason that he didn't do a good enough job of adding depth to that position, last year, because after the top 4 guys, after Pittman, Pierce, Downs, and Isaiah McKenzie, it was pretty much a rotation of practice squad guys. And when you're doing that, you can't really get good continuity, and you're playing with fire there, because like as you mentioned, if Pittman goes down, I mean, we saw what happened last year when Michael Pittman wasn't in the lineup against the Atlanta Falcons. This passing offense came to a screeching halt. So you expect Josh Downs to take a step, you expect Alec Pierce to be more productive with Anthony Richardson, but you still want to have some depth, so in case a guy like Pittman goes down, or if Downs goes down, you can absorb that. It's not such a massive blow to your team. So when we look at the Colts and what they have valued at the wide receiver position over the past since Chris Ballard has really become the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, and this is kind of fits in with the Build a Ballard mold that Zach has done for a number of years now. Usually the wide receivers over 6 foot, over 200 pounds. Josh Downs has been the lone outlier since Chris Ballard came here as the GM. Usually they have great explosive scores, and then the college production. This is something that could really be an indicator of who the Colts might take. The Colts love to take guys that have led their college team in receiving at least once. So if you're looking at some of the guys, like, and this is why I'm not sure if AD Mitchell is a really good fit with the Colts, because he's never really done that. Xavier Worthy has done that multiple times. Brian Thomas Jr. has done that. So that's why those guys, I think, are better fits on day one, especially rather than a guy like AD Mitchell. But that translates over to day two and day three as well, Noah. You need to be looking for those guys that still hold that high upside. Of course, we're looking for guys with high RAS, athletic testing scores have to be really up there in the top tier for these wide receivers, because the Colts are still looking for high level athletes. They want to bet on those high end traits, especially on day three. And what also can't be dismissed is special teams ability.
Yeah.
Especially that wide receiver 4 and 5 spot. This is partially why Ashton Dulin has stuck with the Colts for so long, because he's an absolute weapon on special teams as a gunner. So when you're looking at guys, especially on day three, that the Colts could be taking at the wide receiver position, special teams definitely plays a role. And if you're not willing to play special teams, or you don't have much of a special teams presence, it's unlikely that you're going to be drafted by Indianapolis, especially if you're one of those day three wide receivers that is really going to have to push to make a team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you've seen that kind of in the past with guys who've been brought in, like these big traitsy guys in the later rounds that didn't really have that impact on special teams. So their kind of tenure with the Colts wasn't as long as you would have hoped. Seen it with Mike Strawn, Deion Kane. I mean, Reese Fountain had that injury, but he wasn't much of a contributor on special teams when he was on the roster. So I mean, when you're nailing down those last roster spots, you're really looking for somebody who can contribute, even if they're not playing on offense.
Yeah, I would agree. So of those wide receivers, that would possibly fit those marks, or that the Colts could be interested. Noah, give me some of your favorite wide receivers that you think the Colts could be interested in, or that you think would really fit well within Shane Steichen's offense.
Gotcha. So if you're missing out on round one, I know the Colts' biggest thing that they've kind of preached all offseason about their offense, they want something explosive. So you're getting out of the range where Brian Thomas is gone, getting out of the range of Xavier Worthy, most likely. Adonai Mitchell, most likely also going to be gone. So you're getting down to round two. You're looking at guys, maybe Ricky Pearsall, but 4.41 140. I mean, he's got that top end speed, but I'm not sure he's that big vertical threat winning deep balls down the middle. Another way you can be explosive is through breaking tackles, and he hasn't really produced much in that through his college career. But you're looking at a guy maybe like Xavier Legette, who has that 4.39. He's that burner deep. You watch a couple just even highlights of him, seeing him pull away from defenders as soon as he gets the ball. So he's got that yak ability, and he's got break tackle ability. So if you want to find explosive, just kind of underneath or shorter routes, even without going straight deep, then he's a big guy. And then here's going to be my personal favorite. Is in round three, Tez Walker out of North Carolina is kind of guy that nobody's talking about as much. He's not getting as much love as the Troy Franklins going deep. But I feel like Tez Walker, one of those Ballard type guys in terms of just raw athletes. And Ballard kind of loves those guys that transfer up in competition. He did it twice in college, where he started out at NC Central Community College and then went up to Kent State for 2 years and then kept going up. He went to North Carolina after that. And really only played 8 games because he was fighting an eligibility issue, and still 8 games he produced. He had 7 touchdowns. He was, I think, 11 yards shy of leading the team in receiving yards. So I think that's somebody who came on really late in his career and just kept improving with competition going up. Like he played to his competition and kept improving his game.
Yeah, and the Tez Walker, bringing up his name is very interesting, because I think a lot of people were pretty high on Tez Walker. He's coming into this draft cycle, and then then the Senior Bowl hit, and those practices at the Senior Bowl where it seemed like he was dropping everything, the drops in the actual game at the Senior Bowl, that really hurt him, and I think it definitely took his stock down a little bit from a guy that was fringe, beginning of the second round, to now you're thinking, third, fourth, maybe later on day 3 if Tez Walker ends up sliding. But he's got that athletic potential, a guy that can certainly win deep, and a guy that I thought might be a pretty good fit with the Colts before everything that happened at the Senior Bowl. Maybe turn on the tape. And while I still think Tez Walker can be successful in the NFL, I think it's going to definitely take the right situation. That situation very well could be with Shane Steichen and the Colts. But I really like the two other guys you mentioned as well. I've got those on my list, starting with Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. 9.90 RAS. The dude is just an athletic freak. It shows on tape. It shows she showed it at the combine. His ability to jump out of the gym, pretty much. I think he's got over a 40-inch vertical. He's over 6 foot. I think he's 220 pounds, just a really big athletic wide receiver that can win deep, and he can win those contested jump ball situations. I think that's where Legette really thrives. He's not necessarily going to be a guy that creates a lot of separation all the time, but man, you throw that ball up to him, he's a see ball, get ball type of guy. And Ricky Pearsall, I also had him on my list for day 2, out of Florida. He's got that Anthony Richardson connection that I think a lot of people have kind of talked about, and he also fantastic athlete, 9.91 RAS, fantastic hands, can win over the middle. Some people think he's got inside outside versatility. I can see that. But I think personally he's gonna eat more from the slot. So as far as the fit with the Colts there, it'd be interesting because obviously you have Josh Downs, who you've invested a 3rd round pick in. You saw great promise with Josh Downs, and you expect Josh Downs to just continue to get better. So does Ricky Pearsall really fit with the Colts? I'm not sure. But if he has that inside outside versatility, I definitely think it could be quite a good fit. The stat of the day, we're going to throw a few of them up here today, but his first one is on Xavier Legette. 71 catches for 1,255 yards, 17.7 yards per catch. So that kind of goes with what we were talking about, Noah. Those deep catches, those contested catches, and only a 2% drop rate. The guy has very, very sticky hands there. So that's a really interesting one. Now, a guy that I kind of want to talk about a little bit also is Malachi Corley. Malachi Corley, I think he's very interesting to me because originally, early in this draft cycle, you're thinking, well, he's the yak king for a reason, and he just eats after the catch. That's something that the Colts really don't have. It's one of the main reasons I'm so infatuated with Brock Bowers, especially in this Colts offense, is not only his ability to win vertically, but his ability after the catch. And the Colts really don't have that. But the thing is, I'm not sure if Malachi Corley really fits the athletic ability that the Colts really want in their wide receivers. He's a good athlete, just not a great athlete. So that's where for me at least, I'm not sure if he would really fit with what the Colts want or meet those athletic thresholds that the Colts have at wide receiver. So I don't know. What's your opinion on Malachi Corley, or what you've seen out of his game?
I mean, Malachi Corley, I feel like, is one of those guys. I'm always going to be a sucker for those denser type, rocked up receivers. I don't know if that's just a recency bias with Debo sort of thing, but I just kind of like that kind of wide receiver in a running back's body kind of thing, where they're always going to be dynamic, making plays after the catch. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just from 8 years straight of watching Ballard drafts and just kind of looking at those raw testing numbers and just trying not to get my hopes up. Try to be like, well, that's not really what they've been looking for, and they haven't really strayed too far outside of that. But if you're comparing, Xavier Legette and Malachi Corley going around the same range, then I would take Legette all day. There's definitely some downsides to Legette as well. His profile scares me a little bit, being a 5th-year senior that broke out only in his 5th year. I feel like trying to project whether that's going to be something that he sustains at the next level when he's going against NFL athletes that are full-grown men all the time is difficult.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then some day 3 wide receivers that I think could be on the radar. Malik Washington out of Virginia, another slot guy that I think has some special teams ability. For the second stat of the day, with Malachi Washington, 111 receptions, 1,384 yards, 710 yards after catch, and a 64.7 catch percentage, 35 forced missed tackles, 58 first downs, and look at all those where he ranked in all those categories: first, third, first, second, first, third. Put up some numbers there at Virginia, and I think I think Malik Washington on day 3 would be a really, really solid fit for the Indianapolis Colts. Your backup slot, can play special teams, really fits what the Colts look for in their wide receivers. And then finally, my last guy, I've had him in both of my mock drafts so far. He'll probably be in my final mock draft as well. Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State, fantastic athlete, 9.89 RAS, 6 foot, over 200 pounds, fantastic explosive jumping numbers, runs a 4.40 as well. This is a guy that you can pick later on day 3, fills the back end of the roster, give you a spot on special teams, and he's a guy that you can just develop. His game is mostly, he likes to find those soft spots in the zones and sit in those and really just pick up those first downs. So you can try to expand his game while he works on special teams, but those are the types of wide receivers that the Colts really look for, especially on day 3.
Yeah. And then I see StatsMat just threw up another one of my guys that I wanted to bring up before we moved on. Luke McCaffrey, I think, is a sneaky kind of guy that really fits all the testing numbers that the Colts are looking for. And then one of those guys that is an inside-out guy that can go step in no matter if you have somebody going out, you have Alec Pierce that goes down, you have Pittman that goes down, you have Josh Downs that goes down. I feel like he can jump in at any of those spots and at least be a reliable target, if not anything spectacular. And then for sure step in day 1, be a gunner on the opposite side of Ashton Doolin.
Yeah, exactly. Luke McCaffrey, obviously from the McCaffrey bloodlines. We all know how they can produce top-tier NFL athletes. 71 catches, 992 yards, and 13 touchdowns in 2023. Also 27 rushes for 265 yards since 2022. So let's move to another pass-catching group, Noah, and let's talk about the tight ends. To me, I don't know if the Colts are going to really go after a tight end if they don't get Brock Bowers, because of how many tight ends they currently have on the roster. Obviously, you're talking about Jelani Woods already being there, and what Jelani Woods can potentially turn into if he's given that tight end 1 role. Kylan Granson still under contract, going into a contract year, but he's been a guy that's consistently moved the chains. We saw flashes out of Will Mallory, Drew Ogletree. We'll see kind of what still happens with that situation, but Drew Ogletree is still with the team and participating in the offseason workouts, and then Mo Alley Cox, last year of his deal, kind of your blocking tight end. So there is a log jam there at tight end. And really, the only thing that I could see them like adding another tight end is Brock Bowers. There are some other talented tight ends, but if Bowers isn't there, I just think the likelihood that the Colts end up adding a tight end is it's just very small. But before we move on, let's look at the super chat from the CFO himself, Patrick. Thank you so much for all of your support, buddy. And Patrick, yeah, there we go. Noah getting another drink in. Patrick asks today, I randomly had Ladd McConkey drop to me at 46 in a mock, and I took him just based on board position. Would he fit in some way if he fell? I mean, to me, you could put Ladd McConkey on the outside and he could be your Z wide receiver. Very fluid route runner. And I think he's a really good athlete too. So I don't think Ladd McConkey will end up being there when the Colts pick at 46. But hey, it certainly wouldn't be a bad pick for the Colts. And I think he could add some solid route running and still add a skill set that the Colts really don't have yet.
Yeah. And there's I'm going to make one bold prediction. My debut on Horseshoe Huddle. I think the Colts will draft a receiver this year that runs a sub 4.40.
Love it.
And I don't think that they're necessarily looking at the 40 times like that to indicate it, but with all the emphasis on explosion, I think they're looking for a guy that can really go one step beyond what Alec Pierce offers in the vertical passing game. So you're looking for someone with true deep threat speed, and Ladd McConkey ran that 4.39. So he's kind of right in that same window with Alec Pierce. If he ends up being the pick, then my prediction comes true.
Yeah, I like that. You've got multiple guys. Xavier Legette, obviously Xavier Worthy. There's plenty of guys. Ladd McConkey, guys out there that run a sub 4.40. Brian Thomas Jr., A.D. Mitchell. There's a lot of electric wide receivers in this class. But Patrick, thank you so much for the super chat, buddy. Really, really do appreciate it as always. All right, Noah, let's talk about the tight end position here. The Colts, when they're looking at tight ends, it's typically they have elite speed, elite explosiveness. That was obvious with Jelani Woods, one of the most athletic tight end prospects of all time, but also showed last year with Will Mallory as well. So that's what they typically look for. I think the need for a really good blocking tight end is still there, as Mo Alley Cox is in the last year of his deal. But I doubt that Mo Alley Cox is back after this year unless it's the vet minimum. Just because of he doesn't play that big of a role anymore. Can Jelani Woods develop into that all-around tight end? We're gonna have to wait and see what happens this year. But when you look at the tight end position on day 2 and 3, who are some of the names that stand out to you that the Colts could have their eyes on?
Yeah, I mean this draft class is interesting with the Colts' big emphasis on athletic testing. There's really not that many guys that kind of fit everything that they've been looking for. But really looking at the Colts roster, it's kind of, I mean, there is a log jam there of young guys, but it's a little bit sneaky, that kind of need when you've got Mo Alley Cox probably not coming back next year. He's going into a contract year. You've got Kylan Granson in a contract year as well. Then Drew Ogletree, who knows what's going to be happening with him. And if you're operating under the assumption that Jelani Woods kind of has to come in and prove it before we rely on him to take any significant role in the offense, then really you're not left with that much past this season. You kind of hoping at that point on the development of a 5th-round rookie in Will Mallory. And that's not a great place to be. But yeah, I mean, first round going Brock Bowers is kind of the only way you can address that and solve that to be like a long-term thing instantly.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, day 2 and 3 guys, I mean, there's guys that fit, but I do think you hit it on the head where they're kind of probably looking for somebody that can be an impact blocker right away and not so much the move guy when they've got Mallory and they've got Granson in the mix. So, I mean, I've got 2 guys that I've kind of been looking at is Ben Sinnott is kind of a big guy who and Ballard loves those position change guys also. And he was a fullback up until this past year, but athletic freak. I mean, he's huge. He's fast. He can jump far, jump high. He's still learning the position. I mean, I think that's going to be a home run if you hit it in round. I mean, probably 3 would be what you would hope for him to fall to. Any earlier than that, then you're reaching. And then Tip Ryman out of Illinois, also another athletic freak and impact blocker right away. One of the best blockers in college football last season at the tight end position. Outside of that, you're looking at kind of move guys. Jaheim Bell out of Florida State, that's 6'2", 240 kind of mold. And I feel like that'd be a little bit redundant in the Colts right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I love Sinnott and Raymond that you mentioned. Sinnott I think is an all around tight end. I think one of the player comp that I have for Sinnott, not that he's going to be as good as this player, but he really reminds me of Sam Laporta. As a guy that he can just do it all. He's a good blocker. He can win over the middle, and he's a really, really good athlete. I think he came in as a 9.73 RAS this season. So good athlete. My personal favorite, and I don't think he necessarily fits with the Colts, but I'm a really big fan of his upside is Theo Johnson out of Penn State.
Yeah.
Fantastic athlete, 9.93 RAS. He reminds me a lot of what Drew Ogletree brings to this team. Not a fantastic blocker by any means, but a really solid blocker at the tight end position. Didn't really get to showcase his talents too much as a pass catcher at Penn State until his final season there, but he's got all the tools. He's got the athletic ability. He showed the hands, was a really good performer at the Senior Bowl as well. So Theo Johnson in round 3, if the Colts did end up moving on from Drew Ogletree, a combination of Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree as kind of your tight end duo, I would be all for that. And then from day 3, Tip Raymond was my pick for day 3 for the tight end position. Another fantastic athlete with a 9.92 RAS. He's the guy that he's your developmental blocking tight end. He can play in the slot a little bit, but he's mostly going to be that inline guy, and he's got all the athletic capabilities to be your blocking tight end for the future. So again, after Brock Bowers, I think there really is a steep drop off with this tight end class. It's definitely not the tight end class of last year with all the talent in that class. but there's still some really solid guys that I think if the Colts did want to look at the tight end position, if say they did cut Mo Cox to gain $6 million in cap space, or they do release Drew Ogletree for his off the field issues when the investigation is all done there. Some of these guys could really come in and probably pick up the slack of those two. So I think after the tight end position here, I mean, what else do the Colts love to look like or love to look at in every single draft? Offensive linemen. They're always going to start in the trenches, Noah, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side. Lineman is what Chris Ballard is going to look for. And honestly, it's low-key a need too, because when you're trying to project for the future, obviously the offensive line this season is set in stone. You got Bernhard Raimann in there, who if he plays another season like he did in 2023, you can probably sleep well at night knowing that he's your franchise left tackle. He's well on the way to becoming that. Your all-pro guard in Quentin Nelson, your Pro Bowl center in Ryan Kelly, which, yes, Ryan Kelly is on the final year of his deal, but I would expect Ryan Kelly to be back with the Colts next season. Braden Smith, when Braden Smith is healthy, and they from what I've heard, they have gotten that knee issue figured out, and Braden Smith should be good to go. I mean, when he's healthy, Braden Smith is one of the better right tackles in football. And then obviously Will Fries. Now, Will Fries is the wild card, because while Will Fries played pretty well last season, and I think established and proved that he can be a starter at guard in this league, he's in the last year of his deal as well. And you're already paying Quentin Nelson $20 million a year. You're paying Braden Smith $17 million a year. Ryan Kelly, while he's getting, I think, $14 million a year, somewhere around there, his next contract is certainly going to not be cheap by any means. And then you got to think about paying Bernhard Raimann here in a couple of seasons. So you can't pay everybody on the offensive line. So in my opinion, I think the sweet spot for the Colts as far as offensive line is concerned, looking for some potential gems on the interior of the offensive line that maybe in 2025 could end up stepping into that right guard role and being the starter if you can't afford Will Fries and you have to let him walk in free agency.
Yeah, so let me just real quick go over the list of guys on the interior of the offensive line that are under contract for the Colts in 2025. Quentin Nelson, and that's the list. So you're really looking at you're going to have to fill it with some bodies at the very least, whether it's, because currently the depth that you're looking at is not inspiring either. So even for this season, you could get somebody useful in rounds 3-4 that can step in a pinch and play. Otherwise, you're dealing with more street free agents or Josh Sills, Danny Pinter, and we don't know how they're doing in extended time. So yeah, it's definitely a need that doesn't jump at you right off the bat, because you look at the starting depth chart and you're like, yep, we got it all figured out. But then looking just one step further, there's some glaring weaknesses there.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if a couple of those guys go down, and that's really going to hurt this team moving forward. So the interior of the offensive line and the depth there is definitely something to look at. So when you look at past picks from the Indianapolis Colts on the offensive line, here's for offensive tackles, they're typically taller guys, 6'6" and above. For the offensive tackle position, I think Bernhard Raimann, I think, is 6'6" or 6'7". I think Braden Smith is 6'6". Blake Freeland is 6'7". You're looking at those taller offensive tackles, tall, but they're also agile. The guys that really show out in the 3-cone drills, explosive, good broad jump scores. Those are typically the prospects that the Colts like to take. And then on the interior, explosiveness, guys that have a lot of college experience. Think of Ryan Kelly, of all the starts he had at Alabama. Same with Quentin Nelson at Notre Dame. Will Fries at Penn State. They played a lot of college football. That's who the Colts typically look at in the interior of the offensive line. And then usually when you think of offensive linemen, think of offensive tackles with the longer arms and the guys on the interior with the shorter arms. The Colts typically go with guys on the interior having the longer arms. So when you think of Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, they have longer arms than the typical interior lineman, while as Braden Smith and Bernhard Raimann their arms are kind of on the shorter end for offensive tackles. It's a very weird trend that the
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts have gone with their offensive linemen, but hey, they boast one of the better units in the NFL. So who are we to judge what they do here? So got another super chat from the CFO himself, Patrick Rye. Thank you so much, buddy, and for making Noah take another drink. Patrick says, I'm really curious what they're going to do with Kelly. Ballard loves to bring their guys back, but he's getting older with injury history. Almost feel like you need to draft this season. Bortolini time. And that's who I was going to bring up is my number one interior guy. I've been clamoring for this guy since before the combine because I knew he was going to test really, really well. And then he stayed as my 4th round pick for the Colts. Tanner Bortolini out of the University of Wisconsin, can play center, can play guard, fantastic athlete, has a lot of starting experience at Wisconsin as well. Chris Ballard is a Wisconsin guy, and Wisconsin just loves to churn out fantastic offensive linemen. And here we go. We've got the superstar himself, Drake Wally, coming in here with a $10 super chat. Drake, you're amazing, buddy. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself. Drake says, give me Tanner Bortolini all damn day. Also, check out Noah and Andrew's written work too. Drake always pubbing us. Thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself. But let's bring up Patrick's here as comment again. Noah, what do you, I don't know if you've had a chance really to watch Bortolini's game that much, but what do you think about the Colts taking a guy like Tanner Bortolini there in the 4th round?
Yeah, taking a guy like Bortolini, I would say, is the move. Whether it's Bortolini or not, I mean, you just mentioned arm length on the interior being a big thing that the Colts have been trending towards, that he's in the 8th percentile in arm length on the interior. So, I mean, that kind of goes against what I'm thinking there. Other than that, great athlete, very productive, started a ton of starting experience in college. But I've been kind of looking at Bo Limmer out of Arkansas, who also played center but can bounce around all 3 interior spots. I think kind of in that similar range, maybe even around later than Bortolini, you could get a guy like that.
Yeah, Bo is I've seen, I haven't been able to watch too much of his game, but when I've turned on some of his tape, I've liked what I've seen. So Patrick, really thank you so much for all of your support, buddy. As always, we always appreciate seeing you here. I want to bring up another stat from the man himself, Stats Matt, because this is another guy on my list, Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State. Stats Matt says my favorite interior offensive line stat. McCormick, we had 15 games with last season, 832 snaps, 376 passing snaps, only allowed 2 pressures all season, at 85 grades in pass protection and run blocking, according to Pro Football Focus. Mason McCormick, a fantastic athlete, Noah. I think he registered a 996 RAS is what I have written down here. And for McCormick, I think he's got a lot of starting experience as well. A small school guy, which Chris Ballard loves his small school players as well. You could probably get McCormick again there, fourth round, maybe 5th. We'll see. But it seems like early on day 3 is going to be the sweet spot for McCormick. But again, he really fits a lot of what the Colts want on the interior of the offensive line. I'm not sure on his arm length, but I know he's got a lot of experience there at South Dakota State. Really good explosive numbers in terms of the vertical and the broad jump. And he's also got some experience at offensive tackle as well.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of also a trend that the Colts have been looking for, is guys that have played more than one spot on the offensive line, especially that tackle versatility. And just brought it up, McCormick's arm length, 75th percentile, sitting at 33 7/8 inches. So that's kind of more the Colts speed. When you're really looking through the interior offensive line in this draft, there are so many fantastic athletes that just seem like they're the Colts mold.
Exactly. And this is why we love Stats Matt, Noah, coming in with the stats right on cue. 33 7/8 inch arms for McCormick, which puts him in the 75th percentile. Thank you, Matt. Exactly. So that, I think, hey, maybe Bortolini shines with the athleticism and has that versatility. But McCormick might be the pick if they're looking for a right guard. And Patrick does bring up a good point. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about replacing or Ryan Kelly and his injury history. He has had a couple concussions. I will say that, and that is scary. I think it's really what this season is going to tell a lot about Ryan Kelly. If he can stay pretty healthy through this year and still stay at his Pro Bowl form, then I don't think you have to worry. I don't think they're going to give him any like record breaking deal at center. Maybe a 2 to 3 year extension, maybe a 2-year deal just to line up with everybody else that's going to be a free agent after the 2026 season. But yeah, I certainly think the Colts want Ryan Kelly back. He's a leader on this team. He looked rejuvenized under Tony Sperano Jr., played one of the best seasons he's had in quite some time. And if he can back that up, I don't think there's any reason to move on from Ryan Kelly at this point. But Patrick also has another super chat saying, "My name's Drake. I can't make it tonight, but here I am recycling cash, drunk Wally sighting." So we love it. We love it. Hey, I will never not take a super chat from Patrick or a drunk Wally signing. Hey, we love to see it. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to us. So one other guy that I wanted to mention, we haven't really talked about offensive tackles that much, but the tackle that I had listed, I know this is a favorite of Patrick's and really a favorite of everybody if you watch the combine. Frank Crum out of Wyoming. That dude, the flowing locks, and he fits really what the Colts want in their offensive tackles. Big guy, fantastic athlete, really agile, and I think as a developmental prospect late on day 3, yeah, sure, go ahead and place the pick and get Crum in the building. He can compete with Jake Witt. Those guys can really push each other, compete with Blake Freeland, and then you've got some good depth at the tackle position in case one of Bernard Ryman or Braden Smith ends up going down due to injury.
Yeah, I mean, and tackle's a little bit more difficult when you're thinking about it because they've just spent 2 late-round picks on developmental guys that kind of fit that athletic frame. And
right.
Freeland, kind of different situations with the two where you didn't really see Wick because he went out early with that injury, and then you saw a little too much of Blake Freeland, frankly, which is another entirely different situation. But I mean, they're both in that same mold, super athletic, 6'7", 308. I mean, when you look at just those two back to back and their measurables, it's almost identical. It's freaky. And they clearly had an idea of exactly what they were looking for at the offensive tackle spot. And Frank Crum is kind of that guy again. So there's always the chance that they're not liking what they saw out of Blake Freeland, or they're not entirely convinced Jake Witt can be the guy based on the little that they saw in practice, and they can go that round again.
Yeah, I would agree, and I do think if I would put money that they do take an interior offensive lineman, probably early on day 3, but I'm not gonna say they're not going to throw a flyer on some athletic tackle late on day 3 as well. But no, let's move on to the final position I want to talk about tonight, and that is the running back position. Because you have Jonathan Taylor starting his new contract extension, and if anything of his performance against Houston in Week 18, where he got injured himself and still ran for almost 200 yards, that's any indication on what Jonathan Taylor is going to look like in 2024. I mean, all-pro Jonathan Taylor is back, and it's just going to get better when you have Anthony Richardson in the backfield. But Zach Moss no longer in the building. He's going to have that opportunity to start for the Cincinnati Bengals. You have Evan Hall coming back from injury. I was really high on Evan Hall last year, thought that he would be a tremendous fit with this offense. We only got to see him for a couple snaps before he hurt his knee. Evan Hall comes back. You still have Trey Sermon on the team. You still have Tyler Goodson on the team, but there's no guarantee any one of those guys can really fill that Zach Moss role of being a solid backup running back, and with Jonathan Taylor fighting a couple of injuries, you want to be able to have that depth and have that someone that can take the pressure off of Anthony Richardson so he doesn't have to do everything there in the backfield. So backup running back or that number 2 running back could be a sneaky need for the Colts, especially on day 3. I think that's really the sweet spot where the Colts would be able to find a solid running back there.
Yeah, I mean, that production that Zach Moss gave when Jonathan Taylor went down was huge. And I just don't feel like that guy's on the roster currently that can step up and replace that. I mean, Trey Sermon kind of stepped in. He was that guy for maybe a game and a half. Maybe he can be that guy going forward, but I'm not sure that's something you want to hedge your bets on. Evan Hall coming back, I think, could be big. He's more of that change of pace, pass catching kind of guy, not really that bruiser between the tackles that Zach Moss ended up being. So I feel like if you're going for a running back on day 3, you're kind of more looking for that Zach Moss type mold. We're looking for that one cut, straight ahead kind of guy that can put his head down and get some yards. Even though most of the guys that I actually like on day 3 are the opposite end of the spectrum, where they're going to be in that kind of pass catching mold. Just like I said, I like receivers who are kind of in running back bodies. I also like running backs who are also just as good at receivers. So just me kind of fighting against myself based on what I like and what the Colts actually need.
Yeah, and not a bad thing to like those receiving backs. You want to be able to have that dual threat coming out of the backfield. And when you look at the Colts picks, thinking back to obviously Jonathan Taylor, Evan Hall were draft picks by Chris Ballard in this regime. But you also think of a couple other guys that aren't on the roster: Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, Jordan Wilkins. Those are some of the running backs that the Colts also took. And when you look at those guys, all of them had at least above average or really, really good speed. Jonathan Taylor, 4.3 40. I mean, Evan Hall was in the 4.4s, I think. Maybe 4.5s. Nyheim Hines, really fast running back as well. So you look at these guys and they're all speedsters. So that definitely has to be taken into account. They're usually not very slender running backs because Jonathan Taylor's 5'10", but he's also 220 pounds. Nyheim Hines, shorter guy, around 5'9", but he was over 200 pounds. Evan Hall, the same way. So while they may be shorter, these guys are bigger running backs. So they're definitely not going to be pushed around very easy. And then again, explosiveness. You want those guys that if you're looking at guys that testing wise, those verticals, those broad jumps, really showing their explosiveness so that way they can get the ball, make a cut, and head to the end zone. That's what the Colts typically really want in their running backs. And I think there are a few of those guys on day 3 that can really fit this mold. And the first one I want to start out with is Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville. I don't know if there's a more perfect fit in this class than Isaac Guerendo, especially if you're talking about that. Yeah, exactly. So if you're talking about this, guy behind Jonathan Taylor, he's about 6 foot, 220 pounds. Bigger running back. He can pass block. He can catch the football. And he's pretty fast too. A 4.3 40. A guy that can really cut and run, has a threat to take it to the house on every single play. 9.90 RAS, hell of an athlete at the running back position. And then another guy that I put as my in my last mock draft, Kamani Vidal, out of Troy that you were talking about. So, a guy that, again, fantastic athlete, bigger running back, has the speed to take it to the house, is a really good pass blocking running back as well. That has to be thought about because for all Jonathan Taylor can do running with the ball, there's still he still needs to improve as a pass protector. Evan Hall, we really haven't gotten to see what he can do as far as a pass blocker is concerned. We know he's a great receiver, so that's a lot of times what he's out there doing. But the Colts also need a guy that can protect Anthony Richardson if need be. So to me, those two guys on day 3, if you're looking earlier on day 3, it's probably Guerendo. Later on day 3, it's probably Vidal. Those are my 2 names to watch. What about you, Noah? Which running backs do you have your eye on that the Colts could be targeting on day 2 or day 3?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to running back. I mean, when it comes to Guerendo, there's really not a more obvious fit of just running style and the athletic profile that you're looking for. Another big thing that I don't know if I'm overvaluing this offseason because of the rule changes, but an excellent kick returner in college also.
Yeah.
And you're looking at another guy on day 3, maybe like Dylan Lobby, who also a great kick returner. Maybe you're looking to add somebody there who you can get on the field. If JT is going to be playing as many snaps as the Colts want JT to play, then you've got to find a role for a guy. And then, you brought up pass protection, which is going to be huge. And Vidal's excellent at pass protection.
Yeah, I would agree. And let's look at some stats. The stats Matt's providing. Isaiah Davis, another guy that I had in a previous mock draft, think that he would be a decent fit with the Colts. Isaiah Davis ran for 1,570 yards and 18 touchdowns a season ago. We talked about Vidal out of Troy, 1,661 yards, 14 touchdowns a season ago. And then Audric Estime, the local kid from Notre Dame, which remember, Guerrero, also a local kid. He's from Indiana, so have that local connection there. But Audric Estime, got to see him up close at Notre Dame's pro day. Definitely performed better at the pro day than he did at the combine, but 1,341 yards for Estime, 18 touchdowns, great pass protector as well. 7th in all of college football with 15 plus yard rushes, and 66.5% of his yards were after contact. Obviously, Estime is not the best as far as catching the football, but if you need a bruiser right up the middle, that's Audric Estime for you, one of the bigger running backs in this entire draft class. So there's definitely some needs for the Colts, and I think this draft class for what the Colts want. They need some depth along the interior of the offensive line. You can get that on day 3. There's plenty of running backs on day 3 that I think would really fit in that Zach Moss type of role. Tight end, if you want to add tight end, if you have a plan to release, Mo Alley Cox, Drew Ogletree, if they're not there, sure, there's options. But outside of Brock Bowers, I don't think the Colts add a tight end in this class. And then we'll have to see how it goes with wide receiver. I think the Colts I would say, if I had to put money on it, the Colts add 2 wide receivers in this draft, one early, one late. Is it as early as the first round with a Brian Thomas Jr. or Xavier Worthy? Do they trade up for Malik Neighbors as Peter Schrager is setting the world on fire with those rumors? Or is it in the second round with a guy like Xavier Legette? Or Ricky Pearsall, Malachi Quarley, or later, talking about the Troy Franklins, the Tez Walkers, maybe in the third round. So the receiver is obviously the position to watch on the offensive side of the ball, Noah, but there's a lot of these positions that the Colts have some sneaky needs at that they can certainly fill there on day 3.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about receiver, even if you miss out early, I kind of really like the idea of a back-to-back, going to just kind of add 2 different skill sets just to bolster up the room and kind of see who comes out on top. I mean, Tez Walker's my guy in 3, and if you're doing that, I also would like to add a Luke McCaffrey in 4 or 5, so you've got that versatility and hitting all the different roles, so you have somebody to fit everything. But yeah, I mean, and then even before running back, before tight end, I think interior offensive line's got to be the second biggest need, and I really think you can just count on them adding that, because I think they would, whether it was a need or not. And when it just is, then that's just the cherry on top for Chris Ballard. Give him any excuse to take an offensive lineman, he's going to do it.
I would agree. So I know the chat has been putting their picks in there, but everyone else that isn't watching live, put your picks in the comments of who you would like to see the Colts take on the offensive side of the ball on day 2 and 3 of this NFL draft. It's a very interesting draft, and I think it could go a lot of different ways. So we'll see who the Colts end up taking throughout the entire 3-day weekend. So Noah, let's wrap it up with the latest Colts news and rumors. Really hasn't been too much coming out of West 56th Street, but the Colts did make a very interesting move in terms of a contract structure. Now, people, if you don't know, probably thinking, what are you talking about? Well, with DeForest Buckner and him signing his contract extension, the 2-year, $46 million extension that he signed on Monday, the Colts structured it in a very interesting way. So normally the Colts don't ever add void years or push things into the future, but they did with DeForest Buckner, and it's very interesting. So his cap hit for 2024 has gone from, I think it was $22 million originally. It's now down to just over $8 million for the cap hit, and instead it's a $26.6 million cap hit in 2025 and 2026, and 2 void years were added onto the end of this deal to help spread out the cap hit. The move ends up giving the Colts an extra $13 million in cap space for this season. So instead of the Colts having around, I think it was $14 million in cap space, they're now close to $30 million in cap space remaining. Very, very interesting. Noah, you wrote a piece on horseshoehuddle.com about this. Kind of go into the reasoning that you think that the Colts would potentially do this. Are they why do you think that the Colts all of a sudden would makes this move as far as the structure goes with DeForest Buckner's contract when historically Chris Ballard has never really done this or put guarantees into the future like with this contract structure?
Yeah, unusual for the Colts is what it is. Even before that, it was about a week before this, I was just going through contracts for all the other AFC South teams, just taking a look. You've got a lot of guys on the Jaguars, especially even the Titans, the Texans that have void years on the end of their deals, kind of indicating that they're kind of pushing their chips in. And void years haven't always been a huge thing in the NFL. Even the beginning of Chris Ballard's tenure, they weren't super common. So I don't know if he was just setting his ways from then and just not the way he's done business, not the way he's used to, and has kind of seen that shift and seen teams come out all right on the other side of that. And maybe that's kind of shifted his thinking a little bit. But when he's the only guy on the roster that has those void years on the end of his contract, it's hard for me to imagine that they don't have a plan in mind for it. Right. I know there's disputes on what the end goal is with whether it can roll over into the next year's cap or just gives them more flexibility, which I think is smart for them to be more flexible if the opportunity strikes for them to make a move, may acquire somebody in free agency or at the trade deadline, even at the upcoming season. But I don't think you make that move when you haven't made a move like that unless you have something at least in the back of your mind for what you might be doing with that money.
Yeah, I would agree there. And there's been reports coming out, but like Stephen Holder from ESPN said he checked in, and the Colts said they're just kind of doing nothing imminent coming. I've seen some reports that the Colts might want to take that cap space and roll it into the 2025 season, like you had talked about. But they were already projected to have over $40 million in cap space. So I don't think that's necessary either. And we've seen the Colts before sign guys after the draft, and I think that's kind of what this is about. They want to make sure they have the flexibility that if the draft doesn't fall the way they want it to, if the board doesn't fall exactly how they want, they've got some free agents out there, maybe at cornerback, that they have their eye on, that they'd like to sign some guys. In my opinion, it's that free safety market. Justin Simmons is still available. Quandre Diggs is still out there and available. Those guys, even after the draft, they could still command, I wouldn't say a lot of money, by any means, but enough that you would still want to be able to have that on hand. So say the Colts after the draft go out and hypothetically they want to sign Justin Simmons. You have that extra $13 million that you can use for Justin Simmons. Not that he would get all of it, but to have that flexibility that you can go out and say, offer him a 1 year, $10 million, 1 year, $11 million deal. Then you're available to go out there and do that. So it doesn't make the Colts locked in, I think, to having to take a safety or having to take a cornerback early. If they don't want to, you have that cap flexibility that if you want to go out and sign some free agents, Xavier Howard still out there, Kella Weatherspoon. It's unlikely a reunion happens, but Stephon Gilmore is still out there. There's plenty of good, solid veterans out there that you could add to this secondary. That's where I think this is about. It's not that I think Stephen Holder, when he's saying there's not a move imminent, I don't think there is a move imminent.
Yep.
But I also don't think that this was merely just a roll cap into next season. I think they did this for the added flexibility that if they need to add a veteran in the secondary after the draft in particular, they have the flexibility to do that. And they have the capability to go out there and bring in a Justin Simmons or a Quandre Diggs, go make an offer for Xavier Howard and a Kella Weatherspoon, a Stephon Gilmore, one of those types of players. So they wouldn't just do it for no reason, and I think we all know that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what it ends up happening, what the money is used for after the draft, because I don't think at this point, a week out from the draft, that any moves are going to be made before then. And we've all seen the Colts make a move after the draft a few seasons ago when they went out and signed Eric Fisher. So definitely not out of the realm of the possibility. If the Colts don't like a guy or take a guy high enough in the draft, or the board just doesn't fall how they want, they have that flexibility to go out and get a quality level free agent to come step in and be a potential starter, specifically in the secondary.
Yeah, and you got to wonder about the timing with it, especially with the age of DeForest Buckner putting void years on the end of his contract, which will run till he's 32. So the void payments will kick in when he's 33 years old. So either you're banking on him maintaining his level of play into his mid 30s, or something's happened where you've decided you needed the money now, because you had an opportunity earlier in the offseason when you extended Michael Pittman, someone who's a lot younger, has maybe more tread on his tires, that you can push that money out and feel a little bit better about restructuring at the end of that deal before that void money gets kicked in.
Exactly. And it kind of just falls in line, how the Colts re-signed a lot of these guys early in free agency. They even re-signed Zaire Franklin early in free agency. Now that everything's kind of settled down, all of a sudden there was a DeForest Buckner extension that came through, and not only was that kind of weird timing, in my opinion, just because it was a couple weeks after everything had kind of settled down, but it also is now structured in this way. There's a reason for all that. We likely won't know the reason until after the draft, but don't be surprised if the Colts do make a move for somebody after the draft, whether it's at free safety with a guy like Justin Simmons and Quandre Diggs, or at cornerback with guys like Xavier Howard and Akello Weatherspoon. So, but either way, these next couple of weeks, Noah, going to be very, very interesting for the Indianapolis Colts, not only in the draft, but as we like to say in Colts country, Chris Ballard never stops looking. And even though it might not be at the time you want, there's some free agent signings that when they come in later in the spring, a lot of times those guys have a pretty big impact on the Colts the next season. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in, and a special shout out to Noah coming on here and filling in for Drake. Did a fantastic job. Everyone, if you haven't done so already, please go follow him on social media. Noah Gebert. Is that how you say it? Gebert. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it eventually. Noah Gebert on Twitter. Make sure you go give him a follow. Really appreciate him stepping in. His work on Horseshoe Huddle. He's got a few pieces out now. Fantastic work as well. So Colts Nation, make sure you give him a warm welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle family, and really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about more draft picks. Want to give a shout out to all of our super chats: Truett, my beautiful wife Danielle, Patrick, and the hardest working man in Colts media, Drake Wally, who will be back on Monday here on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, and everyone else that tuned in to talk Colts football with us tonight. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for when our schedule changes, like next week. We're going to have kind of a wacky schedule. We're going to have shows on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week. So 3 shows next week, if you're including the live draft stream. So make sure you have those notifications on so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So now is the point in the show, Noah, where we tell the people what they need to go check out on horseshoehuddle.com, our written work. Tell the people what you've got up there on the site so far that they can go give a read.
Yeah, so I've got a few things. Before I shout that out, I want to shout out the Indy Draft Guide. We're a week away, folks, and we're talking about day 2 and 3 picks. And as someone who hasn't watched a ton of film, it just basically tells you who the Colts are looking at, what they're looking for. This is basically a cheat sheet for who they're going to draft. There might be 1 or 2 surprises, but I bet a lot of what you're looking for is in that Build a Ballard series, and then you can go read those scouting reports after that. As far as stuff coming up, I'm putting together a unique kind of mock next week, where we're going to be taking a look at kind of parallels in what Chris Ballard has done in past drafts and things that he could do that shouldn't surprise you because he's done them before.
Yeah, I'm excited to read that one. So make sure you go check that out. Love the Indy draft guide plug. That was fantastic there. So definitely check that out. And for myself, I've been writing away, guys. The Colts spoke this week. So I've got to get my analysis out there. Did a piece on DeForest Buckner and what went into those contract talks and what he sees for 2024. Also talked to Shane Steichen about that tandem of Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor finally being healthy, finally being in the backfield together. Shane Steichen has some plans for those two that are going to make Colts fans really, really excited. Also have a piece coming out about Ryan Kelly and his future with the Indianapolis Colts. That will be dropped tomorrow morning on horseshoehuddle.com. And guys, Chris Ballard speaks to the media tomorrow to give his pre-draft press conference. So I'll have my analysis out on that as well. So make sure you check that out as well as all the fantastic writings on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow No Bear. Go follow Noah.
If that's easier, do it. That's easier, do it.
Noah Gebert. Oh my gosh. I'll get it eventually. Noah Gebert. Go follow him on X. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And we'll be back Monday night to talk about the defensive side of the ball on day 2 and 3. Edge rusher, cornerback, safety. Who do the Colts have their eye on? We'll break it all down here on Monday night. So Colts fans, enjoy your weekend. One more week until the NFL draft kicks off, and we know who the Colts will take at 15 and who the newest players on the Indianapolis Colts will be. We'll see you back here Monday night.